and welcome to this week's episode of Trojan Poetry. This week I've chosen the poem. Mike has not chosen it. This is a new poet for us, recommended by somebody on YouTube. This is Mary Jo Bang, from her collection of poems from 2015 called The Last 2 Seconds. And I had never read anything by Mary Jo Bang really until I read this poem, and I said, all right, here we go. Mm-hmm. So get ready, Mike.
Time to read some more.
Here we go. This is called Costumes Exchanging Glances. The rhinestone lights blink off and on, pretend stars. I'm sick of explanations. A life is like Russell said of electricity, not a thing, but the way things behave. A science of motion towards some flat surface, some heat, some cold. Some light can leave some afterimage, but it doesn't last. Isn't that what they say? That and that historical events exchange glances with nothingness. All right, well, there you go, Mike.
Okay, well,
Happy New Year!
I am trying to hold on. I'm trying to hold on to something here. Rhinestone lights blink on and off. That image,
clear.
that's awesome.
Clear.
Yeah. Pretend stars. I'm sick of explanations. And then life is not a thing, but the way things behave. I got a very Buddhist sense out of this, especially at the end with historical events exchange glances with nothingness, after image that doesn't last. So, and there's a lot of just flashing kind of going on here, coming and going very quickly, imagery. The one thing that many things, but one thing I can't figure out right now is a science of motion towards some flat surface. Some heat, some cold. Why is it a flat surface? Is that your grave?
Well, luckily for you, Mike, I've done a little research.
All right.
But I had not thought of that, but that's a very good interpretation, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Well, tell me. Hit me with the research, John.
Okay,
what have you found?
So I was instantly, the thing I liked, that I picked it was, it was confusing, but it was confusing in a good way. So I was like, okay, I want to look at this more. The line that got me, though, kind of the anchor line was, I'm sick of explanations. I'm like, okay, that's a very clear statement of a feeling.
Right.
How does that help me untangle the rest of it, what comes after, right?
Yeah.
So I looked up Russell. I just went to Google and typed in Russell and electricity. And Walter Russell, who lived from 1871 to 1963, was a rogue scientist, sometimes called the modern Leonardo. And he was a scientist who's mostly dismissed now, but he did a lot of things. And he was a musician, painter, sculptor, architect, philosopher, natural scientist. So he has this whole big cosmogony of electricity and things, and he discovered some elements, or he predicted that elements would. So it's this crazy thing. I didn't have enough time to really get into it because it looks like it would take years to maybe study all this guy's stuff.
Right.
But he had this whole thing about electricity. And then I was like, well, I don't know if you have to know all of that, right? To know the poem, is Mary Jo Bang expecting us to really be fluent in this?
Walter Russell's life and work.
This kind of obscure old idea. So I was trying to okay, what does it literally mean? A life is like, she said, a life is like Russell said, not a thing, but the way things behave. So there's that dichotomy between things look one way, or things behave, but then we try to label them somehow not based on how they behave, right? Which is kind of goes to this idea of wearing a costume, right? Things look one way, but they're another way, which ties into that thing at the end. Historical events exchange glances with nothingness. I thought, well, maybe that's a quote, right? If she's quoting this obscure person or mentioning it, maybe that's a quote. So sure enough, I typed in historical events exchange glances with nothingness, and that's a quote from Walter Benjamin, who was in 1829 to 1940 a German Jewish philosopher.
Another Walter.
Yes.
We're two for two.
Yeah. Who kind of was a Marxist, and he's part of the Frankfurt School. I read, again, I didn't have a lot of time to research this, but his quote is, "Things are only mannequins, and even the great world historical events are only costumes beneath which they exchange glances with nothingness." So this idea, ultimately, that everything is nothing, this kind of, not nihilistic, but this very, nihilistic idea, right, that everything is nothing and we put things on top of it.
Okay.
Right, we put costumes on top of nothing to make them seem important.
To make sense of the world.
Right, and she seems to be saying when she says, I'm sick of explanations, she's tired of that, right? She's tired of looking at costumes and being explained to. She wants to get back to the root of things, and that's the way they behave, not all of this glitz, right? The rhinestones, the pretending.
The theory, then?
Right. Because even there in the middle, some light can leave some after image, but it doesn't last. Like nothing lasts.
Right.
Right, and I like what you just said earlier about the grave, because I couldn't get into all the science or theory of the electricity thing, but that would make sense. The science of motion toward the grave, like we're all headed to the grave. She's tired
propelled.
of pretending. Right.
That we can. It's almost like she doesn't. She's tired of people trying to assign meaning to things because there is no meaning.
Right.
Or if there is a meaning, it's not that, and she wants to just experience it. She doesn't want to hear ideas. She wants to live it. It seems like to me.
That's what I came to.
Yeah, and that idea of things don't last and exchanging glances with nothingness. Again, I go back to that Buddhist idea of when the situation is proper, things will manifest and be created, and then they fall apart again into nothingness. So I got, and from that quote you just read from Walter Benjamin, that's deep. There's a lot to consider there, just in that quote and in this line.
I think I don't know if it helped to look up the research. It helped me to feel like I was doing everything I could, but I think I had kind of pieced together enough to make some sense of it.
I thought Russell was just some random friend of hers that she was, some guy.
Yeah.
They were at a show or something with the lights blinking on.
Yeah.
I think you can understand it somewhat on its own. However, that is really interesting to know that that's who she's referring to.
Yeah, the fact that she's going back to such not Walter Benjamin isn't as obscure, and I mean they're both well known, but the fact that she's drawing upon them, these historical figures, to help her understand the present, that's what really intrigues me.
Yeah.
Right? She's trying to draw upon something to make sense of now, because this is from 2015. So,
right.
I mean,
so it's current.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully we didn't embarrass ourselves too much trying to understand that poem. Thank you for the suggestion for the Mary Jo Bang poem. All right. Join us on Twitter at Trojan Poetry DGN or on our website at trojanpoetrydgn.blogspot.com.